want to be a manager, if you want to be working at a management company, starting a management company, work-life balance is not something you should be seeking or looking for in this stage. It was definitely just me at 3 a.m. on YouTube making lists of people. You don't want to try to sell yourself because that's coming from like a place of desperation. You want to sell what you guys could do together, how you can take them from somewhere to somewhere else. People are just being told, you're the best, sign with us, we'll help you do everything, you're amazing. Being someone that can actually tell them the truth, that's a very scarce thing these days.
This concept called the new Hollywood.
It's all about everything living under one roof. There's no digital versus traditional.
Biggest mistake that you made that you wish, man, I really wish I could have avoided that early on.
The number one thing, I kind of alluded to it, but it was...
Hey everyone, welcome to the Creator Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Schreiber. The goal of this podcast is to educate you on becoming a great operator in the creator economy. On today's episode, I talk with Scott Fisher, who is the founder of Select Management Group. Scott started Select 15 years ago and has managed some of the biggest creators, including Gigi Gorgeous, Tyler Oakley, Amanda Steele, and Mindy McKnight. Today, they manage over 450 creators and influencers across many different categories. Scott has been in the creator economy since the start and has seen tons of shifts and changes throughout the last 15 years. During our conversation, we talked through how Scott landed his first creator back in 2010, negotiating brand deals while cleaning toilets at Starbucks, the nuances of scaling a talent management company, the hidden risks of creator businesses, managing burnout within talent managers, and lastly, the future of the creator economy and the new Hollywood. And now for my conversation with Select founder, Scott Fisher. Tell us the story about you working at Starbucks, cleaning toilets, and negotiating brand deals on your phone. Tell us that story.
Yeah, interesting times. You're bringing me back. So this was very early days YouTube where it was a big deal to have 100,000 followers and maybe make $100,000 a year. And I, through a series of events, fell into managing a YouTuber. And the whole idea was that we were producing a web series. I cast them on this web series. The web series got picked up for TV, and I had a deal to be the youngest executive producer from, a TV show, web series in history, whatever. Didn't realize, obviously, that it took a lot of time to get a show on television. So in the meantime, I was in college working at Starbucks to pay for college because I'm from Canada, and in Canada, you can actually pay for college with a Starbucks income. So I was working at Starbucks to pay for school and trying to hustle my way through and either get this web series sold or figure out what I wanted to do. And it ended up becoming that I needed to manage this YouTuber who was on the web series to basically protect what they had built because it's helping us sell this show. And I would be in the bathroom of the Starbucks when I was, being meant to be cleaning toilets. I would be on my BlackBerry just coming up with different, she'll do this tweet for 5K, she'll do this YouTube video for 3K, and just kind of making it up as I went. And at the time, I was able to do that because there was no competition. No other companies were in the space doing this. It was one client. It started to go well, became 2 clients, became 5 clients, became 30 clients, hired an assistant, hired a team, got an office. And then all of a sudden I had built a business, obviously knowing that was kind of where it was going, but it wasn't because I had any kind of training or any kind of connection to anything. It just all started to happen. And then I dropped out of school and just have been running Select since then. So it's just been my only jobs have been Select, Starbucks, and before that, McDonald's. So,
oh man. Well, let's dive in there. How early on those first 1, 2, 3 creators, how did you land them? Give us the process. What was your strategy, if there was a strategy?
It was about knowing that no one else was helping them because there were no other reps in the space. There were no agents doing this at the time, really. Maybe there were 1 or 2 people that were even thinking about this. So it was this kind of underrepresented class of people that were making money. They were creative. They needed the help. And it was like, hey, I'll be there with you. I'll help you. I'll protect you from these problems. I will be the business mind and you'll be the creative mind. And they were happy to say yes because they kind of had no other option. And they're like, oh, someone's coming in to help me, and they'll only take a commission if they make me money. Sure, it's a win-win. And the biggest thing was being there to take things off their plate that they didn't want or need to do, like any kind of thing to do with negotiating or emailing or whatever. And then the way it evolved was once you kind of cover, it's kind of like the hierarchy of needs. Once you cover the base need of making money, then you start to do the next things above that. Then I started to help people with creative. I started to help people with their personal life. If they broke up with their boyfriend, they call you at 11 at night. Like those are the things that started to really turn it into a real thing. And then it grows because someone had a great experience with you. They tell their friend tells their friend. And then fast forward, I had clients in Australia that I never met in person. I had clients in the US that I never met in person. So it kind of all starts with doing a really good job for a couple people and having the right judgment to not do things unethically, to be a good person, to make them feel like you are in it together and you guys trust each other and like build a real partnership. And then once people feel like they have that connection with you, they'll shout you from the rooftop because they'll be so grateful for what you were able to do, versus if I had taken the approach of just like trying to milk it for everything I could and make the most amount of money in the shortest period of time, people would smell that and not trust you as much. And, then you just kind of have the bad reputation that it's hard to trade on in the future.
Is this 2015? Is this early 2012, 2015? Where is this at?
This was 2010, 2011 kind of time.
Yeah.
2014 is when I officially moved the business to LA and really started to scale. But I had about, between 2010 and 2012, I had about 30 clients of my own, and one or two team members supporting me, but it was chaos. And then 2014, I moved the business to LA from Toronto and hired a team here, and then started to like think about the business as a entity and not just me as a person managing people. And that's when things started to really scale from there.
And in 2010, as you're looking at the market, you're looking at all these different platforms. What niche are you looking at saying, hey, I really want to, manage these types of people, or I really want to manage these types of creators on this type of platform? Was there a specific goal that you're like, all right, here's the opportunity?
I was a child of YouTube from whenever it launched. It might have been, was it 2006 or something? Whatever it was. And before that, MySpace, like I was very much of the social networks and I loved that whole world. That was my entertainment, was YouTube. So I always knew that those people were, to me, just as important as a regular celebrity. And I was a student of the game in the sense that I observed what they were doing, saw how people were making money, saw how they were growing their audiences. And I saw that fashion, beauty, and lifestyle on YouTube was just exploding at the time. This was when being a beauty vlogger was like crazy. There were so many beauty channels. They were getting the most brand deals of any other creator because the brands were early in beauty and fashion. And it was such a conversion based thing where they were just spending so much more than they would be spending on like a male comedy channel or a prank channel or a science channel or whatever. So I was just like, okay, this is where the opportunity is. I'm obviously not like personally watching them all the time, but I can appreciate that they have an audience. I can appreciate honestly that a lot of the clients I had were easier to work with, being like a female lifestyle person than some prank guy that can go get arrested one day. So I was like, this is a great niche. They're converting, they're making money, they want the help, they want to just focus on creative. They're not trying to only do the business side. And it just started, the few clients that I had started with started in that space, and it just kept working, that I was like, why change it if it's working? And then over time, obviously in the last like 15 years, we've expanded into other categories, but the female fashion beauty lifestyle was just a great business. And the creators that were making that content were great to work with and appreciative and like collaborative. And it was like, I had the privilege of my first few clients were such great people that it made me want to keep being a manager. Whereas I'm sure if my first client I ever had was, not a nice person, I wouldn't have continued to do this.
In those first couple brand deals that you're negotiating, what are you learning there? How are you, pitching them? This is obviously really early on. Brand deals on YouTube, people, don't know how they work, what price they should be paying, that kind of thing. What landmines are you stepping on early on when it comes to the brand deals, and how are you pitching it to the actual brands because it's so new?
Yeah, well, at the time I had never even read a contract or knew what a contract was. And I was in school for broadcasting, so I was learning about how to make a TV show, not about how to negotiate a deal. So when I first started working with the first client, they had done a few deals, so they showed me those contracts. I studied those contracts, saw what they did, researched them. I then, when I did my first deal, I would go back and forth, and basically every time you're just asking for more money. So I was like, whatever you did last time, let's try to get double that, and then work our way and meet in the middle. Then the next time you just keep trying to climb the ladder. And then once I got confident in how to negotiate the rates and I was getting those rates, you then are able to know, okay, if they said yes to this, they said no to this, I could probably be able to get somewhere in the middle. And then that's kind of how the fee, it's pretty straightforward on how a fee would work out. But all the other terms like usage and ownership and the, indemnity and all these things that come into a deal, you just learn by doing every time and trying to get improved terms on every deal you do. So in the very beginning, I'm sure I made a ton of shitty deals, but everyone probably did back then. And a lot of clients, I'm sure, would have taken the deals at even worse terms than I got them. So it was a learning experience, but you kind of learn by asking, and then you either get it or you don't get it. And then you just keep trying to take pieces and pieces and get to the best terms you can. But it was kind of like I got an MBA and a law degree in a lot of ways just for 10 years of just doing the work. Because you learn by doing and learn by failing, and I failed a lot. But then once you've learned those lessons, you don't repeat the mistakes. So it works out.
And outreach wise, are you just finding emails on the internet and just shooting cold? What were those? It sounds kind of nitty gritty, but what was your messaging? Hey, I'm Scott. This is who our creator is. Here's what we can do. Let's chat. Or did you kind of have that formula?
Yeah. So it was definitely just me at 3 a.m. on YouTube making lists of people, looking in their description box if they had an email, and this was even pre that because no one else was doing it. So I was like just seeing if people were viable. And then once you have the few clients and you have the wins with those clients, you totally do reference them when you reach out and you say, hey, I work with these people. We've been able to do this together. Would love to chat. And the goal for us from the very beginning, especially because it was just me, I wasn't able to have hundreds of clients. I never wanted to have hundreds of clients myself. 30 was a crazy number for me to have. So I was able to kind of say, hey, I have this small group of talent. I'm opening it up to a few more people if you would be interested. And then people feel like they're part of a community and a team and a family. And that worked really well when it was just me because it was that. And like if I was signing a new client, sometimes I would even ask my other clients, what do you think of them? Should we bring them into our thing? Should we sign them? And then it's like people feel like you're kind of in it together. So in the beginning, when it was just me, I was able to be really picky and cast a wide net, have a lot of conversations. But even if I had 10 conversations, maybe I only signed 2 of those people. So it was obviously a different time than it is now when there's competition and there's larger companies and things like that. But it was it was less of the whole dynamic just goes back to, you don't want to try to sell yourself because that's coming from like a place of desperation. You want to sell what you guys could do together and like how you can take them from somewhere to somewhere else. And that's where people get inspired and like want to work with you versus if you're a rep and you're just begging to work with someone, that's they can smell that energy. And if I was a creator, like I wouldn't want a rep who was desperate to work with me. I would want someone that has other things going on and is totally fine and could help me. Like I would want a rep that's 10 steps above where I am versus someone that is like dying to talk to me.
And how did you deal with the contracts early on? This is, I feel like, a very interesting topic in talent management, where you hear some people say contracts are essentially worthless. If someone's unhappy, then you guys should just, be done and they should go our separate ways. Was that your pitch to the creator was, hey, I'm going to only, take what I get you as far as deals go. If I don't make you anything, there's no financial loss. And if you're not happy, we can go our separate ways. Was that the pitch early on?
That was really important to me early on because I obviously didn't necessarily know how it was all going to shake out. So I wasn't going to promise someone something and lock them up for multi-year and try to do all of that. It was very much a handshake, very much, eat what you kill. And then over the years, as the business grew and we had more certainty and track record, you have some kind of contract. But in 15 years, we've never kept a client in a contract if they were unhappy or if we were unhappy. You wouldn't just like keep them to keep them because it's a person's life and livelihood and all of that stuff. So we've always been very the contract between a manager and the client should be the last thing anyone is thinking about or worrying about. And I always tell people, if a manager is so intent on a contract and it feels like that's their biggest focus, there's probably a red flag. They should be worried about getting you other deals, not about the deal with you. So the contract piece is definitely something that even today we'll work with someone for a few months before we even talk about a contract, because it needs to be a fit on both sides. And, maybe the talent and the manager just don't jive personally, or maybe the manager is not thinking it's a good long-term fit. So they don't want to put someone in a contract if they're not even planning to work with them long-term. So we kind of do the whole date before you get married approach, and it works really well. So everyone can kind of get to know each other. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And then worst case scenario, we would never keep someone in an agreement, because chances are 9 times out of 10, if the talent's not happy, the manager's not happy either. Because most times, if everyone's killing it and making so much money and everyone's so successful, you're both going to be having the
Super
time of your
happy.
life. So yeah.
So you said you were managing 30 clients at one point all by yourself. I mean, that's a hell of a lot. At what point did you say, all right, I need to bring people on? But even maybe before that, Scott, how did you manage 30 people? What was your process? Were you checking in with them on a weekly basis? Was it just a ton of emails, FaceTime, that kind of stuff back and forth? How did you go about that to keep everyone happy? Because I'd imagine too, when you've got dozens of deals flying around and you're just one person, it gets overwhelming.
It was crazy. Like, I look back on those as like some of the best times, because they were so wild and there was never a dull moment. And I, wasn't sleeping. I wasn't doing anything. And I had no social life for 15 years. Like, I genuinely did not take a vacation for the first at least 12 years of my career. And personal life was like non-existent. So that was a big thing, but I was so focused on doing it that it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like I was energized by it. And I think it was also a different time where you had to be so all in, because there weren't companies built to do this. It was like out of necessity. You just had to do every part of the job. I got to the point that I had never obviously had another job, so I didn't know how to manage my inbox. I didn't know how to do these basic things. I was also doing all of the invoicing and payments and collections and paying talent and just like all the chaotic things that I realized I couldn't even find an email that came in my inbox, because I had hundreds of emails. They weren't organized. It was all just a mess. And I was like, this is not sustainable. I'm going to go crazy. So I got a couple people that I met through college. They worked for me. One was like an assistant, one was a coordinator. They were kind of like offloading some of the work, talking to the talent a little bit, doing some of the back and forth on email. That helped. And then once I moved to LA, I made a very concerted effort to reduce the size of the roster, to have, maybe 15 clients that were really high value, and not have 30 just to have 30, and then have more support staff working directly with me and those clients, so that I almost had like day-to-day managers helping with the clients. So it wasn't just on me and then maybe an assistant like chiming in here and there. It was like a team effort, and building a team around the client is the thing that allowed me to scale and keep going, because you have people you trust that are running point on the execution and the deliverables, things that a manager doesn't really need to be worried about, like getting an Instagram post up on time. Like, that should be something that the client obviously needs to do, and maybe they need someone to nudge them, but that's not the best use of the manager's time. So building systems like that, where things were more on autopilot, helped me, keep up with everything. The 30 was unsustainable unless I had a team, and then I ended up running the business, and that was a whole other thing. Yeah, it was chaotic.
Let's double click on that 30 to 15 transition. How did you decide? Because I think this is a problem, Scott, that more, management companies face is, do they want to go for scale and get as many people as possible? And there's, inevitably you're going to have your tier A, B, and C types of creators in terms of what they're earning, their earning potential, and also just ease of working together. If they're easy to work with, obviously manager is going to enjoy it. Some people not responding to things, not responding to opportunities, you're losing money, you're losing time. How did you decide to cut that 30 to 15? What was your criteria for that?
Yeah, and we still do this today at Select, where we look at obviously the revenue, we look at the client's long-term goals and what they want to do. Do they align with ours? We look at working together. Is it a positive relationship? Is it rewarding on both sides? And you have to weigh all those factors. If someone just because someone's having an off year revenue wise, it doesn't mean you necessarily need to drop them. But if they're having their revenues down and there's no long-term plan and they're really hard to work with, there is no reason to have them on the roster. If they're amazing to work with and you believe in the long-term plan, then yeah, keep them if the revenue wasn't working. So we do that to this day. We have 450 clients. Every client, every quarter, we analyze all of those data points and show them to the managers so they have a visual of their roster and they can see, okay, this client's really successful, but the revenue is actually a lot lower than expected, and this is happening. So maybe I need to figure out what's off with them and help them improve this, and like kind of go through each client and analyze all of these things. And I did that in the early days to just optimize and know that I was spending time on things that were moving the needle. And my whole motto is like work smart, not hard. Like there's no reason you should be spinning your wheels on something that's not eventually going to become business success for you and the client. And it's, as a manager, your number one job is to do right by your client. And if you are representing someone and you're not moving forward and you're hitting walls and it's not working and the revenue's not there or whatever it is, you're doing them a disservice by continuing to work with them, because maybe there's someone that could be a better fit for them. Maybe they need to change things about what they're doing and then come back and then you can help them execute. So it's always like kind of similar to if the manager and the client are both happy it's working. If something isn't working, don't try to push it forward and just like wait for it to figure itself out. Like something has to change. And it's always better to analyze it and deal with it in the moment than, just hope it works out.
Before you guys split ways with a creator or influencer, do you try and transition them to a different manager internally? Do you kind of play that mix and match to see if maybe it can work with somebody else, and then if you try a couple of times you go your separate ways?
Yeah, it's very personal, and that's why I said like sometimes there are personal relationships that are just better, or bandwidth issues with managers or whatever the reason ends up being. Chances are like there's not tons of moving within the company because we obviously feel good about our managers and their ability to service a client. But there have been situations where, maybe even another manager comes on to co-manage just to offer more support, and that client loves both managers and they kind of do it together. That happens a lot, especially when, a lot of our managers have grown within the company. So they started as coordinators and they became managers. Sometimes a coordinator will work with a client and then get promoted, and then we'll still work with them with the manager originally, and they kind of continue as a team. And the clients that I had over the last 12 years, a handful of them are still obviously with the company, and they now work with people that used to be their coordinators who are now their managers. And it's like a nice evolution. So there's some of that. And then for the most part, the managers really work as a team to talk about, how they're feeling, get perspectives from each other. If something's not working, they can ask, the 25 other managers how it's working for them. And they are able to kind of work through problems together. Or like if they're hitting a wall with what to do for a client, they're able to get ideas from their whole group of peers that can then help them. It just helps everyone kind of stay more in line and in sync.
And for you guys early on, and maybe this is the case now, but what does the communication look like with a creator influencer? Is it a daily touch point, a weekly touch point in terms of calls? And this may seem, again, a little bit too in the weeds, but it could be really helpful for someone who's starting in your spot, right now. How did you guys structure that so that they are heard? Obviously communication is massive, but how did you structure that week to week?
It depends on the client, and sometimes you're speaking with your client every hour of the day, every day of the week, on weekends, at night. Like that's very normal. Other clients, maybe they don't need that level of communication, and maybe they just want a structured once a week call that you have with them. Other people, maybe they only need a monthly call and then everything else is handled by email. So it's very personal, but the key is that the manager is able to keep up with what the client wants. And if a client wants to speak every day, then they should speak every day. And obviously that needs to be backed up by the revenue and the deal flow, and everything has to make sense. But it's very one-to-one. And that's why sometimes different managers are better fits for different clients. And sometimes why a client might not be a fit. Like if you want to speak every day, but there's nothing to talk about, then obviously,
We're not
that's
going to
not
speak every day.
necessary.
Yeah.
Right. So, but then sometimes like when you're like, we have a manager that's on a sold out tour with her client. We have a manager that has a hit show with her client. Like you're going to be talking when things are going on, it's every second of the day. You're with each other in person all the time. You're traveling, you're on flights, like there's so much going on. So it's usually as things start to develop is when it gets to that point. But it's really important to have the personal relationship and the trust. And if a manager isn't connecting with the client, it's better just to not, like to work with someone else, because you need that trust, you need that personal relationship, you need that connection, and to know that the manager always has your back is really important.
I'm curious, do you guys have a certain threshold or maybe just a mark for someone's brand deals, their revenue mark, before you say, all right, we're going to start looking at diversifying revenue streams, maybe looking at merch, looking at maybe starting a CPG business, or, is there a point where you say, hey, we want to focus solely on brand deals until we get to, X amount of dollars, and then we can start to have conversations? How do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a certain number, but it's definitely a period of time where if you start working with a client, everyone has big goals and big dreams, and they should, and you want to help them fulfill those. But if you just started working with someone and they're growing and they're just starting to make money and this is their career, maybe you don't start a skincare line, within the first 3 months of working together. Like there are always times and places, and a big part of our job is giving people the real advice and not just being a yes person to them, and being someone that can actually tell them the truth. And I think that's a very scarce thing these days, where people are just being told, you're the best, sign with us, we'll help you do everything, you're amazing. Nah, nah, nah. And our thing is like, how do we actually help people? And if it means saying no and saying, hey, we actually don't agree that you should be putting this out right now, or you should be, maybe we wait another year to do this, or whatever it is, you're protecting them from failing, and you're protecting them from wasting time and money on things that might not work. And maybe they keep going with their gut and they do it and it works and it's a success, and that's amazing. But at least they were armed with the information to make an informed decision, versus just like pretending everything's okay all the time and just not saying something. So we definitely give people all of the information, all of the advice, all of the feedback. And then when it's time to go, we have all the resources to activate and make something happen for someone. And our thing is like, we are the vessel and the ability to help make it happen. But at the end of the day, if no one buys the product, or there's not someone to partner with, or there's no option, like we can't wave a magic wand and
Just make it appear.
yeah, but we can go through all the steps necessary, and we have all the information necessary to give it its best chance of working. So we have some situations where clients had relatively small audiences, they were doing some brand deals, but not a ton. They had the right product, and now that brand is, a multi-million-dollar brand. So like it does happen, and you don't have to be making millions of dollars in brand deals just to start a brand, but you need to have a reason for that brand to exist.
I also think that you guys probably have a lot of conversations about with your creators saying, hey, just because you've got a big following doesn't mean you're gonna just absolutely crush it on this type of business. And here's what it actually takes if you want to do that. One thing you and I talked about in the pre-interview was the illusion that, from the outside, you can see someone's creator business and go, oh my gosh, I want that. That looks amazing. But on the inside, it could be a total disaster that they sunk all their money into, and that it's not cash flowing, and, it's a huge detriment to their overall business and life.
Yeah. And some of the biggest examples of creator businesses that you would know, and when it comes to mind of big successful creator companies, once you look behind the curtain, and none of our companies, of course, but once you look behind the curtain, you see that, oh yeah, the creator put in all of their own money. They haven't taken any money out of the business since it started. It's not growing anymore. The creator's burnt out of it. They want to transition off of it being a personality based thing. Like all these things happen, but from the outside, it's like, oh my God, they're killing it. They must be literally making $100 million a year and pocketing all of that money, and it's amazing. So it's like that with anything in life, where perception isn't always reality. And just because you think someone or something looks so amazing, chances are it's because they're trying to make you think that. And you'll see some of these companies, like even a celebrity founded brand, you'll see that celebrity on the cover of Inc. magazine as like a founder. And then you'll end up finding out that the sales volume for that brand is like very minimal. And it's all just part of the narrative. And it's totally fine. That's it's a free country. It's how America works. Like you need to speak about what you're doing, but it's not always real.
Yeah, you got to understand the nuances of running a business. I want to go back early on, Scott. The first 3, 4, 5 years, biggest mistakes maybe that you made that you wish, man, I really wish I could have avoided that early on.
I think the number one thing, I kind of alluded to it, but it was spreading myself too thin and not staying organized and not knowing how to be organized and not knowing how to keep everything together. And those are the times that I wish I had another job before this, because I would have learned just how to be someone's assistant and organize an inbox and keep things together. And I was just like flying by the seat of my pants the whole time. But that's something that I would have kind of probably held back a little bit on, is like not take on so much and also just take the time to learn how to structure things. And now obviously through that, I'm a very type A, organized, specific person, and I've learned all those mistakes, so I will not repeat them. That, and then I think sometimes it's easy as a manager to get caught up in the personal aspects of it all. So it's really hard to make sure you don't become friends with all of your clients too in depth, because then you can't have 30 best friends, like you can't be that same thing to every person. So you start that with the initial group of people, you have a really close relationship, but you kind of need to adjust how that works over time as you grow, because you can't give everyone that same experience and it's not sustainable for you. And then the other mistake would be learning that it's just a business at the end of the day. So you can all be excited about what you're doing. You can all love each other so much, your clients, your team, everybody. But at the end of the day, we're here to make money. And you need to keep that in mind, that as a representative, you're being paid by your client to help them. So there's an inherent change there where they, if you're going through a hard time, it doesn't really matter because you're getting paid to do the work for that client. So if they're having a hard time and you're having a hard time, you got to just swallow it and help them with their hard time and not even go into yours. And in a friendship, if you're both having a hard time, you both talk about it and you have to give and take. In a client management relationship, I don't expect them to care if I had a million things going on, because I'm being paid to help them with what they're doing. So that was something I had to learn, that, if I was going through a hard time, I couldn't make it about me. I had to do my job just like any other job. Even though you're friends with these people, it's not on them to look after you. Your job is to look after them.
Yeah. And that leads to the conversation of, we talk about creator burnout all the time, but then one thing that I really love that you've talked about before is, manager burnout, agent burnout. How do you deal with that? One thing that you talked about in the pre-interview was that you've got a couch in your office, and that, people come in and just talk to you about those personal problems, because like you said, you can't, you shouldn't be talking to your creator about your personal problems if you can avoid it, right? That's usually not a good idea. They come to you with personal stuff, but I'm sure business stuff. What is your advice to them? How are you helping them? Because that's a really big part of the business itself.
Yeah, I always had a couch in my office, and it always ended up becoming a therapist couch. When I had clients, they would come in and lay on it. And then over time, when I had my team, they would come in and lay on it without really noticing that they were doing it. And I would just sit back and ask them questions. And that's honestly my favorite part about the job, is like helping someone who has a lot going on unpack what they're dealing with and put together a plan to fix it. And managers and clients are very similar in my mind, because they're kind of doing the same thing. It's just a different mode of doing it. And people still to this day come to my office once a week and like do their therapy session, and I help them try to just like make sense of what's going on. Representative burnout is a real thing, and it's a really tough thing, and it's something I dealt with. And that's part of why I transitioned into more of the company role, because I had been doing it for 10 plus years and I was burnt out by it. And that's something we're trying to help support people through, how they can avoid getting to that point. And it's all these things about not having too many clients and finding projects that actually get you excited and not doing the same thing too many times, finding clients that fulfill you and you're excited about, and all these things that I didn't know back then. I was just doing whatever was in front of me. And it's about like also understanding that sometimes you're in those crazy moments. And I tell our managers, like, I remember when I was in those chaotic situations, But I look back on those now as like the most fun times of my career because it was just so crazy and like the good old days that like you kind of also have to just embrace that that's a moment in time and it's not going to last forever. Um, and for a rep, it's easier to do than a creator because for a rep, if you have something crazy going on with the client, it'll eventually end and maybe there will be a new client or something will change. As a creator, the burnout's really so much harder because it's their whole life, their livelihood. If they burn out and it stops there. Like whereas a manager, if they get burnt out, you go on vacation, maybe you part ways with the client that wasn't working out, and then you can sign a new client. It's like a fresh start every time. So the managers being attuned to how their creators feel is really important because we take it seriously. Like our clients, if we have 450 clients, those are 450 people that are feeding their families or are literally helping to support their families or friends or their communities. It's like thousands of people at that point that would be affected. So it's a serious thing that you're not just like, it's not frivolous brand deals and whatever. Like we've had clients that have helped obviously buy their parents' houses, get out of crazy debt, have given to charity millions and millions of dollars. Like it's actually helping people. So that when the managers like really think about that, it helps them get out of their thing, but then it also, hopefully they can give that same advice to their client to remember what all of the positives are and how lucky they are a lot of the time.
Do you have any resources, a book, a podcast, a YouTube video specifically for agent burnout or just managing that, or maybe just a framework for how to think about it and work your way through it? Is there any resources that stick out to you?
That's something we're actually putting to paper because we've found that having it, because we've done it obviously all when we talk, we just talk about all this stuff, but having an actual piece of paper is really helpful. I honestly didn't read any books or anything that helped me get through it. To me, it was like the number one thing I learned, and this is even in the last few years, is gratitude. Like when you have gratitude, everything else is easier to deal with. And a lot of the time when I was getting my most frustrated was when I wasn't being grateful for what I had and I wasn't being grateful for how far I had come. And I was future tripping on what could potentially happen. But the ability to have it written down is something we want to do. And I think the key is like I learned how to meditate. That was a big thing for me. Like those kinds of resources are really important. And I do want to put them all in one place. Because for reps, it's such a niche thing like that no one's writing a full book about it. Maybe they should. But, there definitely should be more resources. So it's something we're definitely working on.
Yeah, even a step-by-step guide of, all right, here's how you're feeling. Here's 3 resources for this particular feeling, whether it be, very overarching feeling, but the meditation, the gratitude, the journaling, that kind of stuff to work your way through is just crucial, so that you can deliver the best product. When you look at the future of the creator economy, one thing you talked about was this concept called the new Hollywood. Will you define what that is in your perspective?
Yeah, so it's all kind of converging, and we've always said we bridge the gap between traditional and digital. And it almost feels like we've accomplished that in a lot of ways, where the gap has kind of been bridged. And the last 5 years, things have really changed and all kind of come together. And for us, the new Hollywood 2.0, it's all about everything living under one roof. There's no digital versus traditional. The reality is a lot of the traditional platforms, a Netflix, a Hulu, they are digital platforms. So it's all one thing. And the creator economy is basically just an evolution of that idea that a filmmaker is a creator, a musician is a creator is a creator. It's all kind of becoming one thing. And it's really about owning the audience is what the creator economy is all about. And how do you build a business around an audience and own that audience and deliver to that audience? And that's why all these platforms went D2C, because they wanted to own that audience and creator on that audience. And now it's just, you take a creator, you take a celebrity, it's all the same playbook. And you're building the ecosystem around them. And for us as a company, it's the same thing. So you have your talent management business, but then you need to build the consumer products business around it. You need to build the production business around it. Eventually, maybe you build a brand and PR agency, you build events and experiences. And it's like you need to create the full spectrum so everyone can tap into those different things. And with Hollywood, the problem in the past was that they just weren't evolving with where things were going. But I think the last year or two, honestly, were like a huge wake-up call to see their space declining and the creator economy booming. When maybe 2018, 2019, they were probably, creator economy was growing and Hollywood was slowly steadily rising, and now the growth rates have changed. And a lot of executives in the traditional space that have been around for a while are starting to see this and catching on to it. And I love that people are calling it the creator economy because it's new and it has a new shiny name, but also I love that people are waking up to it today thinking it was, a brand new thing overnight when we've been doing it for 15 years. So we're at a point now where it's really starting to hit critical mass, which is amazing, but we've done so much work for so long that it's old news to us and it's great. Everyone's on the ride. Okay, now let's start really going because it feels like early days where, we've basically been proving it, it's proven, and now we can really start the real work.
Is there a particular thing you hope that the creator economy evolves into over the next decade? I think one of those in particular that we've talked about on this show a lot is the investment into creator businesses, private equity getting into the game, venture capital getting into the game, angels, right? They've all been in it, dabbled in it, but not to the level that some of us are hoping for. How do you view that?
My main hope is that things continue to just be democratized and it opens up opportunities for people that 20 years ago would have never had the chance to create the life that they can now create because of all of these opportunities and the ability to make money for themselves and their families and not have to work the job they didn't want to work. Like that's the hope, is that it just continues to open up opportunities and exposure for people that wouldn't have been able to get that before. I'm an example, grew up farm-ish area in Canada, had no connection to entertainment, no reason to do this. The only reason I'm here is because of the creator economy and the ability to take another path that wasn't taken before. And I hope that that's what continues to happen for people. I think the ability to remove some of the gatekeepers that existed before is going to continue to happen. And I am fully aware that now I'm in some way also a gatekeeper, but we think of things so differently than, they did in the past, that hopefully a lot of that culture changes where it's not just about being someone's friend or family member to be given a chance. It's based on merit. We try to do that at Select. It's a meritocracy and people, do the work. And if you do the work, you get rewarded. So those are the things that I'm hoping for. I think a lot of the investment piece is hard. Some of the money that came into the space in 2021, frankly, probably shouldn't have been put into the space. And it was into ideas maybe that you were creating a solution in search of a problem. And, the creator market obviously the creator economy is large, billions of dollars, obviously, but building a specific startup around a specific tool for a specific subset of creators probably isn't a huge market opportunity. So I think obviously private equity, venture capital into big ideas, into things that are new and exciting and interesting, yes, but I think things always shift and evolve, and it's not like we need more money into creator startups because there was a lot of money into creator startups. You just need new ideas with fresh capital for those new ideas.
And I also think the addition of more really good operators to help creators in every single little niche. There's so many there that can be really great businesses where, just like you're saying, they don't have to work their job that they didn't want to be working, or they get to transition out, or but they might not be 10 million, 20 million, $100 million businesses, but they could be a couple $100,000, $500,000 businesses. They just need the right operators. They need the right manager to help them get to that next level, which is just crucial.
And that's something that I'm really excited to see when I meet people that are just graduating college and they're getting their first job. They're coming to Select before they would go to another company or to a movie studio or to something, because like me, they grew up on this, and this next generation, even more so than I did, this was fully their world because it was developing as they were going, and it was really exciting and really growing. So I have a lot of faith that like the next generation of operators and people that are working in the space, they're going to come to the creator economy that in other eras, decades, they might have gone into tech or they might have gone into entertainment at a traditional company. Now you're kind of getting the best and the brightest to this space because they see the opportunity has such a higher upside than the other places they might have gone in the past.
For someone who is starting a talent firm similar to Select or just the same type of model, what books do you recommend they read, ASAP?
The one book that changed things for me is called Traction by Gino Wickman, and it's essentially a step by step of like how to properly set up your business with the right values, the right commitments to your team, where to look, where things could go wrong. Um, and there are a million obviously amazing books, but that's the one that really sticks out, and I love recommending it because it to this day still sticks with me. Whereas some of the other books that we've all read, like, yeah, it's all nice stuff and you read it, but like you're like, what did I actually take away from this? And I just vividly remember maybe it was 10 years ago over the holiday break, I read this book and I wrote 15 pages of notes and did all these different things that helped my business. And like that book really did do a lot for me. I also love any and all biographies of any successful business people because you just learn little tidbits of things. And a lot of it is varnished and you don't know how real it all is and everyone has their own spin, but any biography you can pick up is always a good one because just seeing how executives operate is important and kind of a lost art. Like we say to our team all the time, it's like you need to have executive presence, you need to be able to sit at a table and talk to people and network with them and work a room and all that stuff, and that's kind of lost on Zoom and on email and things. So learning how like the old school executives did it, take little pieces from that and build your approach to it, because all that stuff still matters, and like how you treat people, how people feel, how you stand up for yourself, all that matters.
And did you have any mentors as you were going through this business? God, I know early on you didn't have hardly any, really references there, but as the business matured and got older, is there, maybe one or two people that you really were able to, turn towards during, challenging points?
Honestly, the first two or three clients of mine were my mentors. I credit the very first person was Gigi Gorgeous, who was that first client I met, and she was so amazing to work with and taught me what a good client can be, and that allowed me to grow a lot and fail and win a lot. And had I not had a great first client, I would have not pursued this. If she was a nightmare, I would have just quit and been done. And she also taught me, and the other clients I started with taught me what was acceptable from a manager, what they needed, what they didn't need, and like you kind of pick up on cues. So unfortunately, I never had someone that like picked me up and walked me through who was like generations above me. But I really do feel like the mentors I had were my peers and the people that worked with me and taught me what they needed and what they wanted. And they really did change my life and were such great people to help me through. So I definitely credit them with my success because they allowed me the space to learn and grow, but also kind of held my hand through a lot of the things as I was learning how to do it all.
The last question I got for you, Scott, is this need for great operators within the creator economy is critical. It's something we've talked about throughout this conversation. What advice do you have for those who want to be on the manager side? They want to be in the agent side, or maybe they even want to run their own management firm. What would you say to them at this point in the creator economy, 2024, getting ready to get into 2025? What would you say to them?
So I touched on it a lot, but the idea of like work-life balance is not something you should be seeking or looking for in this stage. You need to be all in and know that like it's a season of your life, it's a phase of your life, and if you really want it, you have to work really hard. And that's something that, scares off a lot of people, but that's kind of the point. That's like something's worth having. Take hard work, and not everyone should get them. So I think knowing that if you want to be a manager, if you want to be working at a management company, starting a management company, these are all, everyone would do it if it was easy, and they're really hard things, and you're not going to have balance all the time. You're going to have really high highs, you're going to have really low lows. And obviously at a place like Select, we try to limit those so people can have the high highs without having too low of lows, and they can have balance. And like, I'm really proud that we've done, I think, 8 parental leaves for people going on maternity or paternity leave where they've been able to take 6 months off, fully unplugged from work, have full coverage. Their roster wasn't affected. They made more money than ever. Like, those are the things that as a company we really try to do. And because we've achieved those levels of hierarchy that, we've met the basic needs, then we can focus on the balance and the maternity leave and paternity leave stuff. But when you're in it and you're boots on the ground, you're starting, you just need to be like laser focused on what you want and be the first person to be on, last person to log off. You really have to want it. And if you don't, that's totally fine. but just be honest with yourself on like, if you really do want it, you have to put in that work. And if you want something else, you have to maybe choose a different path or work somewhere that maybe the bar isn't as high and you can kind of get away with whatever. But hard work pays off. And when you care deeply about something, people know and they feel it and they want to help you and support you. So if you just show up every day with like the best attitude, leave your stuff at the door, be ready to work and give it your all, like you absolutely have such an opportunity. And there's, like you said, there's operators in the space, there are people that have been doing it, but it's still so young and we need more good, smart people that are ready to do the work. So I'm excited to see like the next group of people that come up, and I want to work with them and support them and have them at Select or invest in their companies or whatever it is. But I'm just excited to see, I love meeting some young person with hopes and dreams and hard work and like ready to go. So hopefully that all continues, and it will. But yeah, the hard work is the number one thing, and not taking no for an answer and being really determined and just waking up ready to go every day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Creator Ops Podcast. If you're interested in chatting more about the creator economy, send me a message on LinkedIn or email me at hello@creatoropsmedia.com.